Hi everyone, I will be reviewing the book Dead Aid, Why Aid is Not Working and How There is Another Way for Africa. The author of the book is Dambisa Moyo, published in 2009. Dambisa was born and raised in Zambia and received her education at Harvard and Oxford University studying economics, and later obtained her doctorate, which led to her work as a global economist and strategist, working for Global Bank and Global Sachs. Moyo brings to her book academic expertise and real-life experience of the impacts of Western aid in Africa. Dambisa is not the first to criticize Western aid, but instead speaks from her personal experience and conviction to the topic of discussion. Dambisa's past affiliation with the World Bank made me as a reader more trusting of the information brought forth, whilst also being very analytical of her suggestions. Throughout the book, Dambisa analyzes the history of economic development in Africa over the past 60 years. She reveals why she believes aid has had a great impact in the degradation of Africa. In the beginning of the book, Moyo outlines three different types of aid: humanitarian aid, charity-based aid, and systemic aid. She places more focus on systemic aid, which is aid in the form of monetary payments directly to governments, which is in this case termed as bilateral aid. She also looks at multilateral aid, which is termed as transfers via institutions such as IMF and World Bank, which are transferred to governments. For the purpose of the book, she does not place emphasis on humanitarian or charity-based aid, but places emphasis on bilateral and multilateral aid. Dambisa argues that concessional loans and grants have in fact stifled and retarded Africa's development due to the high interest rate attached to the loans. Dambisa speaks to the disservice aid has brought, which has now crippled Africa, creating an aid-dependent model. Dambisa begins with giving a brief history on aid following Cold War in the 1930s and goes on to reveal the different types of aid provided to the global north and to the global south. The distinction she makes clearly is on the progression of the global north has had following aid, whilst outlining the regression Africa has had following aid. Dambisa poses numerous questions on why Africa has repeatedly continued to flow into why aid has repeated to continuously flow into Africa following the millions which have seen no results. Dambisa's main argument is that Western donors have the power to create reform and pull away from the aid model, while she argues that donors will not do such a thing because aid in fact is a different form of colonialism due to the self-interest initiative placed by donors. Dambisa criticizes African leaders as well for their lack of ethic and values, as she states that corruption has had in fact been the driving factor in the poverty in Africa. Dambisa states that Africa is like an addict which is in need of being weaned off aid. Dambisa states that it is for Africa to begin to deny aid whilst being prepared to face the consequences. Dambisa states that accessing bonds, rebonding from a default, and tapping into capital markets can be the solution for Africa and has worked for countries like South Africa and Botswana. Therefore, she also states that it is important for African countries to begin to partner with China, as China has been more of a friend to them than the US and other European countries. Dambisa states the need to challenge Western politicians who are maintaining the status quo of aid, whilst also placing more pressure on African leaders in abandoning the aid model. Dambisa ends with the quote where she states, "The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is now." African proverb. Thank you.